The John Lebang Show has been known to make people laugh, sing, think, scream, throw things in rage, and generally lose their minds. Listener discretion is advised.
Worldwide and out to the greater universe, you're listening to the John Lebang Show.
Am I the only one who thinks this COVID diagnosis for the president is just a tactic to keep him from doing more debates and having to deal with the malpractice media questioning him constantly on his little misstep by not actually denouncing the white supremacist groups? See, they look at that, and white supremacist was in the question, but militia was also in the question, and that was a way to trip up the president into having to dance around the question. He should have just answered it better, something like, yeah, I denounce white supremacists, but I do not denounce militias because they are constitutionally demanded. So your question, Mr. Wallace, was a little out of bounds. But yes, I denounce white supremacist groups as well as denouncing black supremacist groups and any other supremacist group that is out there. That's how he should have answered that. But for some reason, he got tripped up, confused. He was under attack. It was a 2-on-1 debate for sure because Mr. Wallace didn't take the time to pressure Mr. Biden the same way he did Mr. Trump. So yeah, I think maybe this COVID diagnosis is really a ploy to just stay out of it all. Let's ride it out to the end at this point. Nothing much is going to change. We know that. Debates aren't going to change people's minds anyways, and if they're more of the same, as we saw last time, we don't want our debates. So why not create a situation or create a narrative that says the president can't deal with it? Now he can't do interviews, he can't do anything with the COVID thing. So he's virtually safe from face-to-face criticism, face-to-face accusations from the malpractice media in these last few weeks. He can issue statements that are well-crafted and be done with it. So it's probably, in my opinion, a really good move on his part. Because doing more debates, when you had a Fox guy teaming up with Biden on you, you know that when the other malpractice media types join in, when they have their turn, it's just going to be more of the same, if not worse. So why not create a narrative and stick by it? And he's got the perfect opportunity with the damn coronavirus. He can say, oh, I don't feel good. But then we get stories where he's, he does the little update yesterday or the day before, I forgot what it was, where he's doing better and stuff. So I think whatever this is, it's not really COVID. It's a way to stay out of the spotlight because he needs to. And with the election just around the corner, it's going to be bad enough anyways. Might as well prepare yourself for the onslaught that's coming after. Nothing's going to be better because we have right-wing people, right-wing militia groups, right-wing activists that are going to feel completely disenfranchised if Trump loses and nothing was really accomplished during his tenure. And they're not going to deal with the Biden policies. So it's going to push this into even more pain for the country. And the government that is, can claim these right-wing groups are the problem, even though they've done absolutely nothing to all these supposed left-wing groups, the Antifas, the Black Lives Matter, and so on and so forth. These people aren't a problem according to the mayors of these cities, the governors of those states. Yet white supremacist groups are the problem. And I asked this of somebody the other day, and I'm going to ask it of you, ladies and gentlemen. Name me, in as many as you can, white supremacists burning down cities, white supremacists going out. Name me the group, name me the day, the time. You see, those things, even though they may exist in pockets of the country, they're not the normal. Although the media, the political parties are all trying to push the narrative that it's white supremacist groups that are the problem. Tell me a city where white supremacist groups have burned down, ripped down statues, have looted. What city in this country have they done that? Now, are there incidences? Sure, maybe, depending on how the media reports it and what actually happened. But when we talk about strictly white supremacist groups doing things to this country, I don't see it. And it wouldn't be accepted by anyone. Yet the Antifas and the Black Lives Matter and all their allies can do whatever they want, terrorize cities, loot, burn. And not only are they not on some list somewhere, again, opposite the president's list, I'm talking about the real lists of who they're going to go after when all this stuff goes down, when they finally decide who's going to be president and how they want to rip the country apart. I mean, I think they already have the idea. They're telling you Biden is winning, leads. And I'm telling you, I don't believe that. I can't believe you believe that. Anybody out there who believes the polls saying Biden is in the lead and he's increasing that lead on a daily basis. I don't see it. When I drive down the road and I look at lawn signs, it's probably pretty equal with the lawn signs. And I'm telling you, if you got a Trump sign, a lot of people who support Trump are not going to put a sign out. So you don't know. But I talk to people individually, and it's Trump, 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 Trump. I don't support Trump. I even support Biden less than Trump. That's kind of where I'm at. If we have to have one of the two, because we're going to get one of the two, we're still better off with Trump, in my opinion. But I probably get some hate mail saying I'm a Republican there. But Biden and the policies that Biden is pushing is so devastating to the economy of individuals that I can't support it anyways. Funny thing with Trump having the COVID is Biden is now going to be able to chill out with the debates himself. He won't have to go either. He can claim, we don't want to catch the virus now. So it works out for both parties where they don't want to have, or where they don't have to have debates, because there's a built-in excuse now. And after the last debate, nobody is going to complain about it, because who's going to watch more of the same? So it was perfectly orchestrated from my point of view. Boy, they did a good job in making sure they don't have to do any more debates. Everything fell into place perfectly for that. And people are going to believe the president has COVID. And see, he's going to be able to use this because he's taking experimental drugs and other things. Apparently, that's what they're saying. To combat the coronavirus so he can get back to work quicker. And they rushed him off to the hospital because he is 74, a little overweight. But he's kind of a tall guy, so whatever. But he's older guy, overweight. It was a perfect excuse. And I'm not saying that he doesn't have it, but it fits perfectly with the narrative. But on the other hand, I've thought about this because you see the conspiracy theorists, and I could see this happening, especially right after the debate, where you had both sides interacting. It would have been easy, in my opinion, if you want to get conspiratorial a little bit, if you want to theory craft, like we say here, it would have been easy to have somebody be the carrier. They already think they know who that is, but to have somebody be the carrier, come in contact with the president, make sure that they breathe all over them, maybe even whatever, make sure it's easily obtainable for the president to catch, and go from there. And then just wait it out. Because apparently nobody had corona. They were all tested at the time when they did the debate. That's what we hear all the time. Everybody's tested. Everybody's tested. Well, if everybody's tested, then how'd you get it? You know what I'm saying? But they believe they have the culprit, and that person, I won't mention her name, that person should be held accountable a little bit. If it was just some stupid mistake by a little millennial woman. But I don't think it'd be that hard, especially in the current climate, to introduce the boogie woogie virus to the president through the debate. In fact, it would have been very much how they would have introduced it if they did, theory crafting again, if they did during the World Military Games in Wuhan, China. It would have been probably dispersed the same way. However that was. But I'm not saying that. I think it's a move by the president to keep himself from having to do debates and to deal with the media directly almost till the election, because if you go through a 2-week period, and we know he has it, so he has to come clean, and then 2 more weeks from my understanding. So that's going to take us right into the election. No doubt about it. Pretty close anyways. So from his point of view, I think it's a brilliant move. Whether it's real or some conjured up event that they needed to get the president away from the malpractice media, who is now doing everything they can to discredit this president in the last few weeks of the election. And because he tripped over his words, because he didn't have a smart enough answer, then they have something that they can jump all over. But we know, because we've heard the president on many occasions denounce these groups. But the malpractice media won't play that and say, hey, he probably screwed this up. He probably tripped over his own words. There's probably a lot going on, because at the time that question was asked, there was a lot of arguing going on, a lot of stepping over each other, because there was a lot of things being said that weren't exactly true or were manipulated from the Biden side. And Trump was probably trying to, because I remember it very well, he was trying to correct them, and Wallace fella wouldn't let him correct it, and he just went on and put this question in the president's lap. I would have liked a full-blown debate where they just went back and forth, and maybe the moderator just needed a buzzer to buzz him. Bzz, bzz, bzz. That would annoy him more than, or that would stop the argument, in my opinion, more than sitting there going, Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. Biden, Mr. President, Mr. President, blah, blah, blah. That was a debacle. Anyways, folks, we're going to take our first time out. Thank you for tuning in. I didn't even say that. We went right into it, and I forgot to thank you for being a part of the show this week. So we'll be right back. We got some more things coming up. Stay tuned.
Hey, Uncle Shady, where are they going? Hey, you, get back here. The John Lebang Show will be right back. Are you in need of commercial or residential window cleaning? Do you need your office cleaned? Maybe custodial work? How about some gutter cleaning?
If you do, then call Pane in the Glass. For a beautiful shine that's crystal clear, call Pane and the Glass. You can find them on Facebook at Pane and the Glass. You're listening to the John Lebang Show.
It's better than an Islander convention.
So the Michigan Supreme Court strikes down Gretchen Whitmer's executive order and extension of the quarantine and the lockdown. I don't know how that's going to work itself out exactly, because I'm sure there's going to be appeals, but you can't appeal the Supreme Court. So I don't know where they're going to go from there. Maybe they'll go to the Supreme Court, the one they're arguing about over the new justice. But if she was doing illegal actions, according to the Supreme Court, shouldn't we be able to bring charges against her? Some kind of criminal, whatever, litigation against this woman for putting us through this trauma over the last, I don't even know how many months this has gone on. It went from 2 weeks to forever, and now litigation has come through saying, you were wrong, witless Gretchen, you were wrong for doing what you did, those dictatorial powers. Personally, I don't see how she's not arrested right now and brought up on charges for doing that. Because you didn't do it to one person. This was an entire state. This is a major crime that you committed, witless Gretchen. And are we going to be able to see some justice over that? Is it possible that we're going to see some kind of legal action against her? I don't think so. Remember, she's in government, which means they have a different set of rules. And because they have a different set of rules, they're free from all forms of justice, because it's just us up there. So we have that on the table. And I've noticed through my employer that we're preparing, they must have known this was coming down, that we're preparing to reopen almost in a regular format now. The changes that we've gone through over the past so many months seem to be going away soon. Hopefully, we can get rid of the mask, because if everything that she did was illegal, the requirements of the mask is also illegal. And because of that, anywhere I go, I'm going to go without a mask, whether they like it or not. And if somebody stops me, I'm going to explain to them, do you know that the Supreme Court of Michigan overturned that and said those were illegal? She couldn't do that? And then they're going to go, because it's already been implemented for so long. It's a policy of our company. You see, they use the government to push it through to make companies follow along, and I can guarantee you companies are now going to make it mandatory, whether it's a law or not. And with the Supreme Court ruling, everything that came from those executive orders are null and void, even the mask mandate. So, will we be able to, here in Michigan, go to the store without masks? Maybe technically, but I guarantee you, folks, plenty of companies are going to make you wear masks and make their employees wear masks. You know, to keep down the spread of the virus. Because supposedly, according to them, the people who have screwed this up from the very beginning, masks helps reduce the spread. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but who cares? Because you people are the ones who have screwed this up from the very beginning. So don't tell me or lecture me on what I can and can't do. Because speaking for the average American, you have been wrong since the very beginning. And the thing you've got to do when somebody is wrong all the time is not listen to them. Don't listen to these politicians anymore. Don't listen to the CDC and all these medical groups that have told you to do these certain things. They've been wrong, or they haven't got it right, or they have fed you false or misleading information, changed data. We don't even know the actual count of people who have died versus the infected, because, as the CDC reported, and you got to watch what you say, because some people have been deleted from social media for these kinds of words. But the CDC admitted that like 1/10 of the people actually died from COVID, and most of the people that died had other problems that led to their death, that were the cause of death. But you can't say that on social media, because that's fake news. That's falsified information, misinformation, disinformation from the people who, well, create the news, from the people who disseminate the news. If they say what you're saying is wrong, whether it's right or wrong, it's wrong, and they're not going to allow it. And this is going to further an agenda that they have always wanted. We already know that whatever this boogie woogie virus was about, they have taken advantage of the situation and implemented things they could not or would not be able to do any other time in history. They needed a problem. They found a problem, whether they created it, it was there, and they took advantage of it. People had a reaction to the problem, a reaction that these people in government and in these agenda groups wanted, they created, so that they could get the solution that they were looking for. And as we march closer to the election, into the Christmas season, and up to the new year, we are seeing this play out in a way that most of you would have never suspected in your worst nightmares. And they're preparing you, folks. If you've been listening, they're preparing you. They've set this election up to where nobody's going to believe the results, or at least half the country isn't going to believe the results. They, the people running the government, the people running the election, the people who are deciding the direction of this country, have set this election up to be a complete disaster. And because it's going to be a complete disaster, and then first time in modern history, we're not going to know the results of the election the night of the election, because they don't want you to know the results, because they're going to play with the numbers to get the results that they want. And then we're going to see the reaction of the people to the results. And I can tell you, the malpractice media, one way or another, are going to claim the Biden team won and the Trump team lost. And they're going to push that. They're going to constantly push that. Whether the narrative is true or not, that's what you're going to get. And when we find in, I think it was Pennsylvania, Minnesota, and other regions, we're finding that they're locating ballots that have been trashed. You know, those mail-in ballots. This election is going to be tainted. And when it comes to January and it's time for Trump to leave, and the media says Trump lost, and Biden says that he won, no matter what the real result is. Now, they might say Trump won. They might say that. But I'm taking the idea that they're going to push the narrative that Trump didn't win, even though Trump might have won. And Trump's going to stay in office, and then they're going to push to remove him from office, which is going to rile up their base. And nobody's going to remove him from office because he probably won the election. So nobody's going to have the legal authority to prove he won the election. It's very convoluted, and it's perfectly set up for this, folks. The media is going to say he lost. The Democrats are going to say he lost, so their base is going to move to remove him. And we're going to see people gathered outside the White House trying to tear it up. We haven't seen anything yet, folks. They're going to go after the president if it is the scenario I'm talking about. This is what's going to happen sometime after Trump is supposedly either inaugurated for the second time or is supposed to leave so Biden can move in. This is the scenario that's set up, folks. And the media is already getting you worked up about it. They're already planting that seed, so when they're ready to unleash that narrative, it's going to be already in the back of your mind. And as we move through the Electoral College, which the Electoral College can then, with the election up in the air, the Electoral College can say, well, since we don't know the rule or the results of the election, because we're going to just vote any way we want, the Electoral College can be manipulated to one way or the other then. You see the mess we're heading for. And my calls for canceling the election is the only way to save the country at this time. There are no other ways to save the country from burning itself down after the election unless we cancel the election, ask for everybody who's been in more than one term out, to get out. We don't care if your term is up. We don't care. You're gone. And we're going to bring in new people that are not bound by political parties. We can't afford to do that anymore, folks. It's impossible the country is going to survive this election unless we outright cancel the election and tell those people to go home. You're done. You have destroyed the country. If you've been in government more than 4 years, get out. Get out. We don't want you. And we, as the people, can do our own personal term limits by not voting these people in successively, time and time again. We talk about term limits. It's because the voters won't take that responsibility on themselves, so we got to force it. And the politicians don't want to force it, so they say, hey, you know what? The people don't want term limits because they don't vote that way. They vote to keep people in for decades. So it gives them a built-in excuse to do whatever they do, all their criminal behavior, and they can say, well, we were elected, and we were continually elected because the people wanted us. They don't care how corrupt we are. They wanted us. And since it's just about us, you little people don't matter. And when your vote no longer counts to these people, they then will turn on you on a dime and run you over, abuse you, take money from you, whatever it is, because that's what government does. The bigger the government, the more tyranny. And right now, the left is pushing tyranny. Break time, folks, just like that. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Don't move a muscle.
The John Lebang Show will be right back.
With lots of fun and excitement. Yes!
Jim's Tuxedo and Menswear is your one-stop shop for tuxedos and men's quality suits. We go the extra mile to make sure your tux or suit is the perfect fit. Our huge selection is second to none in the state.
Looking good.
Outstanding customer service.
And we're located on Dix Toledo in Southgate. Call today, 734-285-3253.
Jim's Tuxedo and Menswear is the place to be.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to Jim's Tuxedos and Menswear.
You know I had to come to the best.
That's right.
Hey, man, it's at the bottom of the hour, man. Do you know where your kids are, man?
If you want to contact the John Lebang Show, feel free to send an email to jlebang@live.com. And if you're on Twitter, look him up at John Lebang. And don't forget to go to his Facebook page at The John Lebang Show. Banger. Now here's John.
So Michael Savage has announced that he is leaving radio at the end of the year. He's been on a little bit of a downturn over the past few years as far as his radio presence anyways. But he'll be moving strictly to podcast, and you can tell he's quite angry about it. And eventually, if he hasn't, because I haven't caught all his shows since he made the announcement, but he may be explaining why that happened. But I would assume that it's because the mainstream media, including radio, is moving away from conservative talk. Not because it's a bunch of malarkey, but because they want to, well, they have an agenda. That's all I'm saying. And with Rush Limbaugh on the downturn, and he's only going to be on the radio for who knows how long. It's just a matter of time with his lung cancer, how long he's going to stay afloat. All these so-called conservative right-wing medias have been deplatformed, have been removed because the malpractice media, the mainstream media, and the elites do not want an alternative voice in the media at all. So you're going to see people like Michael Savage, Rush Limbaugh when he's done, because he's just too big to just cancel from the radio. That would cause such a, he makes so many people listen, or he gets people to listen, that is virtually impossible. They could do that to Michael because they could probably find somebody that maybe gets close to his numbers and is more radio friendly, because Michael does speak with a sharp tongue at times, and people will have a hard time dealing with that. It's the continuation of the Alex Jones situation and other people that I forgot Stefan's name, but he was deplatformed. These guys are all coming after people like myself faced a lot of the wrath in the social media 8 or 10 years ago. And since then, since we got away with the little stuff, they found ways to start taking out the bigger channels, the bigger voices in alternative and conservative talk. And eventually, they're not going to have that kind of thing out there. It's not going to be accepted because they're moving towards that being some sort of white supremacist thing. That thing, the constitutionalist is lumped in with white supremacists and KKK. That's how they try to lump all the people who are supposedly right of center on the radio and in media. Yet, that's not the case. You don't hear these people pushing that. As I said earlier, you can't give me a great deal of examples. You might be able to cherry pick one or two examples in the media, but nowhere on the level of Antifa or Black Lives Matter or people of that ilk doing their thing. No way is that even this on the same level. It wouldn't be accepted. Yet there's at least half the country that accepts that sort of behavior, that same action out of people in Antifa, Black Lives Matter. What was the other one? Something Wall Street. I can't remember. There's been so many of these left-wing groups that are allowed to pillage and rape and destroy, and they just turn the other way because they're useful idiots. They're part of the cabal, or the cabal's plan, that is. They are just idiots that when everything that the big shots of the world when they get everything in place and they're ready to do their thing, their final move for world domination, these people will be eliminated because they'll be too much of a problem. But until that happens, they're going to blame the white supremacists for everything, yet I want the media to highlight the difference between white supremacy groups burning and raping and pillaging and destroying this country versus other supremacy groups raping and pillaging and tearing up the country. It barely exists, if it exists at all. And nobody on the right or the left would accept any supposed white supremacy if it actually was white supremacy. But guys like the Proud Boys, who are more of some kind of militia-based group, I'm uncertain, and I wish we didn't have these kind of groups because they can be used as targets because the majority of them happen to be of a skin color that the malpractice media can claim are supremacists. And they're also making a target on themselves if this whole thing goes hot. Which, I don't know how long after the election, but I believe it's going to go hot. And we've probably got until the inauguration before it explodes into mayhem. Remember, the media is pushing the narrative that Trump won't leave office. Trump is saying he's not going to leave without a fair election and knowing that the election is fair. The election can't be fair because of the current climate in which they have caused the election to be in. So here we stand as a nation, divided, untrusting of the government, and at least half the country is not going to accept the results. So if you want to tear up the country, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to burn this country down, go ahead and vote in this election. Because that's what's going to happen. The country is going to be ripped apart. Now, if Trump wins in a landslide, which I can't see that happening, because even I think they're working this to make this as tight as possible so that there's no clear winner. They can't have a landslide one way or another and achieve this goal. Biden will not win in a landslide. So the strategy from that side has got to be to keep it close, to make sure that everything stays as close as it possibly can so that it can be contested and it can be taken to the courts and dragged out, and the media can then push the idea that Trump lost no matter if he won or lost. That's the scenario, folks. Come back to me in January and let's talk about this episode and see what happened. If I am not pretty dang close to what the outcome, what the direction of the country is going. And I know that people aren't going to sit this one out. They've pushed this as the most important election in the history of the country. And it is. It is the most important election that we have to sit out, in my opinion. And I'm not disparaging anybody for going to vote. But be clear, whoever you vote for, it's leading us to chaos. It's leading us to a point where the country will tear itself apart. And in a matter of just a few months, an internal civil war is going to explode into a hot civil war. We're already seeing the elements of that in places like Portland and Seattle and other places. It's only a matter of time if the election goes the way I think it's going to go, where it's going to be close, purposely made close, and the media is going to say one thing even though the election results are going to say another. They're going to bring in maybe the Supreme Court. You see where this is all going? And with the new nominee in the Supreme Court, they're all of a sudden going to say, oh, well, Trump won for whatever reason. And the left's not going to like it. And they're going to claim that the new Supreme Court did it. It's going to cause chaos and destruction. And I can't believe we're going to participate in that. So again, I'm sitting this one out. And all this came from talking about Michael Savage here in the beginning of the segment. But he's really pushing Trump. And he said some things where you have to wonder if he's not going a little senile. And that's expected. He's older and the world is falling apart. Almost all of us are under so much more emotional strain than we used to be. The pressure is on almost on all levels, or the boredom has taken over because they're sitting home and there's no pressure there at all. And again, now we got two factions. We got a bored faction and a faction that's overtaxed, overstressed. And it's leading to people being short with each other, people being rude, and you can see that on the social media. Nobody wants to have a conversation to come to some middle point to where we can all find some kind of balance. You notice the election, especially with the Democrats, it's all these agenda items if we win. There's no concern for the people, which is going to be at very minimum, if the results are correct, 49% of the country is just going to have this stuff shoved down their throat. There's going to be no consideration for the other half. And that's going to lead to an incredible amount of chaos if Biden goes in. And then when Biden steps down because he can't handle the duties of president, because he's not mentally capable, and we saw that the night of the debate. He almost lost it a few times. Speaking of the debate, let's get back to that, because there's now conspiracy theorists talking that they saw a wire in Joe Biden's jacket. And I've looked at the video very close, seen what they were talking about. And there is a little wire that does pop out of his jacket, goes back in, comes out a little bit. I tried to look at his ears from every possible angle. I could not see a listening device in his ears, but listening devices these days can be planted behind the earlobe, and maybe that's what was going on there. I'm not saying it is, but Biden, for being at times doing better than I imagine he would do. And when you would watch him, when Trump was talking, there were times where he would be quiet, Biden that is, and it looked like he was listening in on something, and it didn't look like he was listening to Trump, because usually when somebody's talking, you're looking at him, and what was going on with Biden is he was kind of looking down and concentrating on something. And to me, it might have been, I'm not saying it is, but I don't put it past them to use a hearing device to send Sleepy Joe some messages during the debate. And let's not forget, the Trump organization wanted people search before the debate. Biden's declined. They wanted a drug test, both of them, and the Biden campaign declined. So obviously Biden is taking something that would pose a negative impact if the voters heard he was taking this supposed drugs. Because a lot of us have to take drug tests to work in today's employment field when you go to work for somebody. So why shouldn't the presidents, right before, or the people running for president before a debate, why shouldn't they have to take a drug test? Why are they above us? So when Trump asked for that and the Biden campaign declined, to me that tells, that's very telling. Biden's taking something that the public, if they found out, would look down on the guy. Anyways, we got to take our third time out. We'll close out the show after this.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em,
because the John LeBang Show will be right back.
After this,
That's guaranteed. Yes. Absolute Skin and Body Care, located in Livonia, Michigan. If you're in need of laser hair removal, skin care, laser tattoo removal, or laser hair regrowth, call Absolute Skin and Body Care. They're located at 37625 Ann Arbor Road, Suite 105 in Livonia, Michigan. Their phone number is 248-533-0448. Absolute Skin and Body Care. Give them a call. You're listening to the John LeBang Show. It's huge. Now I got to tweet about it. So AC/DC this week started really promoting their new album. Apparently it's called Power Up. That's the hashtag they're using. We discussed it in the last broadcast, in the last segment. And a lot of the things that I was talking about have come to fruition. Now, they haven't put out the official single yet, but we've got a snippet of it. I think on Thursday or Friday we got the snippet of it. And it's called Shot in the Dark. Or at least that's the chorus that they played. And it's just wonderful, typical AC/DC. We probably got 10 or 12 seconds of it, maybe. The whole teaser was about 30 seconds long. But the song is typical AC/DC in the vein of Stiff Upper Lip and Have a Drink on Me. And I can't wait for the album to come out. And I was thinking, man, if this COVID thing breaks up where we can actually go to concerts, I'll be able to go see these boys one more time. And now that I've seen them 27 times, so I only need to see them 3 times to get to that 30 mark. And I think I'm going to make that a goal of mine because I'm a geek AC/DC fan. So my plan is to see AC/DC 3 more times, which is going to be on this tour, because we don't know if they're going to be around after this. I didn't know if they were going to be around after the Black Ice tour. And after what happened during Rock or Bust, I was for sure they weren't coming back for a long time. And I was hoping they wouldn't come back if it was going to be Axl Rose and this broken menage of players that they're just kind of piecing together to keep the brand alive. We were talking about that back when Axl Rose was in the band and how much we disliked the situation because they had Chris Slade on drums. Yes, he was old AC/DC drummer during the 90s when Thunderstruck happened and Big Gun. But in general, it wasn't the classic lineup. Well, now we're being treated to the classic lineup again with Stevie Young also in the band. But they're using parts from Malcolm, which is awesome. I think it's great. So I sent my brother a text and I said, we got to go see these guys when they come in town because, heck, I'm trying to get to 30 now. That's my goal. And I was thinking, because I saw a video, what songs would I like to see in concert in what I believe is going to be their final tour? I've seen them so many times that I already know their basic set list. You Shook Me, Back in Black, Shoot to Thrill, Hell's Bells, all off of Back in Black. You get Highway to Hell from the Highway to Hell album. For those about to rock, we salute you. From the For those about to rock, we salute you album. You get Thunderstruck from Razor's Edge. You get Let There Be Rock and Whole Lotta Rosie from the Let There Be Rock album. You get TNT from the High Voltage album. You get the Jack from that album more times than not. And then they mix it up with some classics, some deep cuts. I've seen everything from Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be to Girls Got Rhythm, Walk All Over You, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. And so I'm sitting here thinking, what other songs besides their main tunes? And they're probably going to play Rock and Roll Train from the Black Ice album because that has become an actual classic of AC/DC. And if you're not familiar with that album, you really should, because that album is one of their best albums of all time. And I know that says a lot, but they have some really unique tunes on that album as well, with Rock and Roll Dream. Black Ice is a great song. Big Jack, Stormy Mayday. What an incredible amount of great tunes on that album. And I was surprised actually that they used some tunes as singles when I thought they had better tracks, but they try to be as generic as possible with these singles, and that's why I think we're getting Shot in the Dark and not one of the harder jams that's going to be on the album, especially if they use stuff that Malcolm wrote, because he had the harder edge than Angus. He used less finesse and he was power. So if they're using a lot of his old tracks, I'm suspecting that the songs are going to be really in your face, but who knows. So as I'm going, and please indulge me, ladies and gentlemen, it's the end of the show. We have about 9 minutes left, and I'm not going to talk politics and the president and all the things that I've talked about in the first half of the show every single minute of these shows anymore. It gets on. It gets to be too overwhelming for the host to have to constantly explain or talk about the things that are going on. So let me indulge. So I was thinking, okay, let's see, what songs would I like to hear? I'm going to say 5 or 6 songs. We're not going to go into a whole major list, but I mentioned that earlier, and it was Stormy Mayday from the Black Ice album. It's a really bluesy song with some slide guitar. I don't think they're going to play it, but that would be one that I would really dig hearing out of AC/DC, because it's a deep cut that nobody would think they would play, and it's one of the best songs from that album. One of the songs that I've never heard live through all the years, and I've heard plenty off the Back in Black album. Being 27 times I've seen them, I've seen practically the whole first side of the album, which is Hell's Bells, Shoot to Thrill, What Do You Do for Money, Honey, and Giving a Dog a Bone. I've seen all those in concert throughout the years. Back in Black, Have a Drink on Me, You Shook Me All Night Long, and Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution have all been at some point or another played by AC/DC during a concert or a tour that I'd seen them in. But one of my favorite songs on the album they've never played live, and that's Let Me Put My Love Into You. I think that's one of the better songs from the album, Back in Black. Yet, with all the powerhouses on that album, it gets pushed down in the mix. If that song would have came out on the Flick of the Switch album or the Fly on the Wall album, they would have had a mega hit right there. But because it was pushed in with 9 other super tracks on the Back in Black album, it kind of gets pushed to the back. Now, more songs that I'd like to hear, and again, I like from the Highway to Hell album, I've heard Walk All Over You and Touch Too Much, Shot Down in Flames, and Even If You Want Blood, You've Got It. But I've never heard Beating Around the Bush, and I would just really love, it's one of my favorite guitar lines from the entire AC/DC collection. I would love to hear Beating Around the Bush, and I think Brian Johnson could sing it tremendously. If you've never heard it, go look it up on YouTube or wherever you get your streaming music from. Beating Around the Bush by AC/DC is a great song. It's off the AC/DC Highway to Hell album from 1979. Fabulous tune. I would also like to hear something, and I'm not that particular, from the Flick of the Switch album. If it has to be one song, probably the title track, because that's the one that they would probably play, or they would play Guns for Hire, because that was the single back. That was like their second single on that album, or third single. I wasn't sure. Nervous Shakedown was the third single or second. I don't remember the order. I was a young kid. That was the first time I'd been fully on board as a follower of AC/DC when they were releasing albums and stuff like that. That's when I actually got it the day it came out. I remember there was these little record stores, and I went in, grabbed the cassette. I was so happy. Grabbed the cassette, and it just had Angus with a big switch there, and it was a white album, hand-drawn. It looked like not very much money was put into the album. And I thought it was a great album. It didn't have the production factor because that was the first album. They didn't have Mutt Lange producing their stuff. I think he had done For Those About to Rock, Back in Black, and Highway to Hell. So they produced it themselves, and you could tell there was definitely a production factor that was lost in the entire mix of the album. And, well, I'd like to hear Landslide. That's one of my favorite tracks on the album, but because I think they would never play that song, that Flick of the Switch would probably be the only tune they would play from that album. I'd like to hear stuff from every album on this tour. Like one track from every album. Give us a deep cut, whatever. Like to hear Heat Seeker again. That was probably my favorite tour with AC/DC. I saw them, I don't know how many times that tour, 5 or 6 or 7 times, traveling around to Saginaw and all these other places to go see them. I was young, and they were still young enough to where the energy factor, and they still put on a great energy factor to this day, but the energy factor that tour, especially the show at the Toledo Sports Arena, that is actually one of my favorite shows, actually probably my favorite show of all time from AC/DC. Malcolm Young wasn't even there that tour because he had an alcohol problem, and Stevie Young, who's currently in the band, was filling in for him at the time. That would be a cool song that I would like to hear. Something from Fly on the Wall, Shake Your Foundations, or Sink the Pink would be great. In fact, I think Sink the Pink would be the tune I would pick from that album. Another album that was underrated because Angus and Malcolm produced it themselves. They put a little more production in the video quality because they had like a mini movie that went along with this. 5 songs with a little story. If you haven't seen that before, you should check that out. It's a little video, 5 songs. It's got Fly on the Wall, Danger, Shake Your Foundations, Playing with Girls, and Sink the Pink. And it's a really cool little montage. It was trying to get AC/DC back from a really poor outing with Flick of the Switch. And I'm not saying it was poor musically. I'm saying it was kind of poor as far as they were used to selling millions and millions and millions and millions of copies between Back in Black, For Those About to Rock, and Highway to Hell. Flick of the Switch did not get that notoriety. Mainly, in my opinion, it was because of the production factor. Then I'd like to hear something off the Ballbreaker album. Nothing in particular. I like Hail Caesar. That would be a great one. Hear a couple off the Black Ice album because that's a great album. The Rock or Bust album, they'll probably play Rock or Bust, but I'd rather hear like some of the other tunes that are on there, especially the ones towards the end of that album, which are just great tunes. And then Stiff Upper Lip would be a great song, although the new song is similar, so I don't think we're going to see Stiff Upper Lip, or for that matter, Have a Drink on Me on this tour, because the new song, Shot in the Dark, I believe that's the title, has that same kind of bluesy guitar going on as those other 2 songs, and with that, I just think they're not going to, those other classics they could bring in to play, that they don't have to kind of double up the same kind of styled song. And with that being said, folks, we've ran up against the end of the show. I want to thank all of you for listening, and especially this last 15 minutes of basically geeking out on my favorite band, AC/DC. Don't forget, if you've missed any portion of this broadcast or want to check out anything else that the show does or I do besides this show, like the Banger Music Hour or the Bangerverse, which, pay attention, folks, Bangerverse new specials coming out real soon, The Adventures of the Gay Squad. With that being said, folks, until the vibrations of my vocal cords reach your ears again, I'm John Lebang, thanking you. We'll see you next time.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. Tune in again next week. Same time, same space, same station.
Resistance